I'm Thalia Ashuris. Winter punch. Yet another storm is socking Colorado and warnings are up as it heads to the east. Welcome to America's first billion-dollar election. Joey Chen does the Campaign 08 math. A day in the life of Baghdad's bravest. Elizabeth Palmer shows us the one public service in Iraq that still works. And all in the family. Chicago's current Mayor Daley talks to Cynthia Bowers about his famous father and his own political future.
This is the CBS Evening News with Thalia Ashuris.
Good evening, everyone. Well, another weekend, another blast of winter weather, and it's not over yet. The storm stretches clear across the heartland, spawning tornadoes in the south, while dumping still more snow to the north. 230 flights have been canceled at Chicago's O'Hare, and delays are reported at Minneapolis-St. Paul as well as Dallas-Fort Worth. Snow-related traffic accidents have killed 7 people in Wisconsin. Now, Colorado once again is taking a very hard blow. That is where Jennifer Miller is tonight. And Jennifer, tell us exactly where you are and what happened around there specifically.
Well, Thalia, it's been a rough day here. We're at the border between Adams County and Arapahoe County, right off of Interstate 70. The storm blew through here earlier today. The highway is open, but only to local traffic. For most drivers, the highway is closed from here to the Kansas border, nearly 200 miles. Now, earlier today, we had a 35-car pileup. Still unknown the exact cause, but weather is definitely a factor. We had whiteout conditions, blowing snow. We talked to one family. They were on their way to the airport hoping to get a flight out to go to Florida today. They're not going to be able to get out now until Monday at the earliest as this storm moves east. Thalia?
Well, the situation there looks quite dismal in terms of those pictures. Were there any injuries?
There were several injuries. The injuries that were sustained here in Colorado from the 35-car pileup were minor. I want to say only 3 people were injured. But east of here, there were other injuries as snow caused problems in Wisconsin. There was also snow in Milwaukee. In places farther south, there were suspected tornadoes, large weather systems moving in, blowing roofs off of buildings, blowing out windows, and some parts of the country also saw hail today.
Oh, quite ugly. Well, now, it looks fairly clear where you are, but what are you hearing as to what may happen through the rest of the weekend?
Well, we're expecting this wind that you see right now to continue. We're hoping here in Colorado that it calms down, but we're hearing that the storm is going to move east, and it wouldn't surprise me if we had more storms in the weeks to come, because March is coming upon us, and in Colorado, March and April are the snowiest months of the year.
Well, I guess there's a bit of good news right there, and that might mean that skiers are probably happy in that area.
Yeah, it's a great time for summer or spring skiing. You get a lot of that wet snow. Luckily for folks in the Denver area, it melts pretty quickly, though.
Thank you very much, Jennifer Miller. People in its path can expect. We turn now to AccuWeather's senior meteorologist, Joe Bastardi. And this is going east. Joe, what's it bringing into whom?
Well, it's going to be a monster in the northern plains tonight into the western Great Lakes, where we're going to see 6 to 12 inches of wind-whipped snow fall in maybe an 8-10 hour period. And you see all the pink in here in Iowa. That is going to be changing over to snow as the night wears on. And this whole shield is coming northeastward and eastward as the night wears on. Of course, the severe weather aspect of this, the lower Mississippi Valley into Alabama and Georgia, is something that's going to have to be dealt with tonight.
And what about the northeast and over through the rest of the weekend?
Well, this is a formidable winter storm. It's going to be a major winter storm in much of the northeast, but not nearly as bad as what it is in the central plains right now, and what we had to deal with a couple of weeks ago, where, of course, that blizzard shut everybody down from Pennsylvania on northward. Instead, in the northeast, we're looking at a 4 to 8 inch snowfall across much of Pennsylvania, 2 to 4 inches tomorrow night and on into Monday morning, perhaps Philadelphia, New York. Freezing rain and sleet will be a major issue, I think, in northern Virginia and on into the Piedmont of southeast Pennsylvania as the snow changes over. It's a nasty storm, but not as bad as a couple of weeks ago.
Sounds like it's quite nasty, but what's behind it? What's causing this storm?
Well, this is the end game of the severe winter weather period we're in. As a matter of fact, I'm already looking for a similar type storm later next week into the weekend that may hit much of the United States. But sometimes after these very severe cold periods that the United States is going through, this is one of the top 5 cold Februaries we've ever seen, what is going to happen is you get a lot of storminess at the end, and then it can flip and go right to spring in mid-March.
Yeah, but more to come first. Thanks so much, Joe Bastardi. A political deep freeze is in store for any White House hopeful who is not able to raise tens of millions of dollars in campaign money. Total spending on presidential campaigns increased tenfold between 1976 and 2004 and could hit $1 billion during campaign 08. The high price of admission has already inflicted one casualty. Here's Joey Chen at the White House.
The end came suddenly. But the reason why former Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack bailed out of the race for the Democratic presidential nomination was no surprise.
This process has become, to a great extent, about money.
Vilsack's long-shot bid came up against the harsh truth of presidential politics. It's gotten expensive. Frontrunners are on target to raise staggering sums even before the first primary ballot of 2008 is cast.
Serious candidates are going to have to raise at least $100 million by the end of this year.
Michael Toner, chair of the Federal Election Commission, says with so much money in hand before the Democrats and Republicans pick their nominees, 2008 could be the first billion-dollar presidential election in which the two major party contenders raise $500 million each.
Early money attracts later money.
Time is also critical to the money hunt. The first key deadline, March 31st. Candidates must report how much money they've raised by then. And with so many candidates in the race so early, donors will use that mark as a test to determine which candidates are strong enough to go the distance.
Many people say that after the first or second quarter reports, there'll only be 2 or 3 candidates left.
Left behind in the money hunt would-have-been contenders who depend on public financing. They're limited to just $50 million for the primaries. Some say that's unrealistically low and that the system needs a complete overhaul to keep more voices in the mix.
Because most of these candidates will have given up, will have felt that they're not going to be heard at all.
This time, that early money is going to be especially crucial because the primary season is going to be so short. A bunch of states are moving up their primaries and packing them into the first weeks of the year, which means, Thalia, much less time to raise money for the general election.
And that means the big money really works. Is that the bottom line?
Well, you know, when you talk about this kind of money, you can't describe it in any other way than to say it's just a ridiculous amount of money. But think about this. In the last 10 primaries, 8 of them were won by the best finance candidates. So it does tell you something about all this, Thalia.
Joey Chen at the White House. Thanks so much. Well, it's been another day of deadly violence and political turmoil in Iraq. Here's the latest. About 8,000 Shiites demonstrated in their holy city of Najaf after yesterday's detention by U.S. troops of the son of Iraq's most influential Shiite leader. Even last night's quick apology from U.S. Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad wasn't enough.
I'm sorry about the arrest. We don't know the circumstances for the arrest, and we are investigating.
And a fuel tanker rigged with bombs exploded near a Sunni mosque in western Anbar province today, killing at least 39 people. When bombs explode in Baghdad, and they do almost every day, the city's bravest risk their own lives to be first on the scene. Elizabeth Palmer has more.
A new set of heroes has been forged in Baghdad's desperation. 24/7 calls flood into the emergency center, which coordinates the city's firefighters, striving to be 100% reliable in a city where little else is. Shift boss Salah Hassan Fayal.
As firefighters, we stay away from politics. Our job is to help anyone, anytime.
Salhia Fire Station has 6 trucks. Some were bought by Saddam with oil revenue. Others were donated. And the men are proud of their modern equipment.
That is using for the high buildings.
Right. Baghdad's chronic power failures have meant more major fires since the invasion, as people have installed primitive generators and gas appliances in their homes. These blazes are one thing, but more often the aftermath of a car bombing is the really dangerous business of the day. And even more daunting is having to pick up body parts after a suicide bomb, especially with bullets flying. There's no room here for ethnic tension. In fact, it's tolerance and even a morning workout that makes Baghdad's bravest a close-knit team. A regular salary of $200 to $300 a month also helps keep morale high. So when the alarm goes, the response is instant. That's what makes a fire siren here sound reassuring. It reminds people in a city riddled with violence and uncertainty that at the very least, the fireman's skill and compassion is just a phone call away. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Baghdad.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, Chicago's Mayor Daley on the family business. Just don't call it a dynasty. The citizens of Chicago will cast their votes for mayor next Tuesday, and as usual, the winner is expected to be named Daley. That candidate, who is on track to overtake his father as the city's longest-serving mayor, spoke with our Cynthia Bowers in a rare interview this week.
How far can you go on when you don't have a job?
Even though he's running for his 6th term as Chicago mayor, the fact that he is still sometimes referred to as Richard II suggests Richard M. Daley still lives in the shadow of his beloved father.
My father's very dedicated. He only wanted to be mayor, and he was elected when I was in 7th grade, and he was passionate about it.
Richard J. Daley controlled Chicago's Democratic political machine for more than 2 decades. His tough, hard-nosed style made him one of the country's most powerful politicians, with a reputation that withstood even the riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. Amazingly, the city of Chicago has had a Mayor Daley for 39 of the last 52 years. The father and son combo are the only Chicago mayors to serve more than 5 terms and the only ones to serve their long stretches consecutively.
Do you think the term dynasty is fair, though?
It's not a dynasty because you have weaknesses, you have frailties, you get disappointments, and then you subject yourself to it, like anything else. You subject yourself, of course, to criticism.
Criticism coming more often these days. Daley's administration has been battered over the last few years by charges of bid rigging and corruption, charges that may not be enough to unseat him, but do threaten to taint his legacy.
Unfortunately, corruption does exist. You get disappointed in people. You get disappointed what took place, but you don't get caught in a tangent. You have to move the city forward. It's amazing how the media's worried about your legacy, and I'm just worried about improving our quality of life.
Most say Daley has improved the quality of life by planting thousands of trees, building world-renowned parks, and eliminating high-rise public housing, including the notorious Cabrini Green.
By the time 2016,
he is trying to win the 2016 Olympics for Chicago, but his most audacious, and he says most important project, is reforming the city's troubled public school system.
Education is the answer to all our problems in the world. There's a line in this city, in this country, in the world. On one side of the line, you're educated, you're doing well. On the other side of the line, you're poverty.
Say you'll come in at the end for the
Paul Green, director of the Institute of Politics at Roosevelt University, says it is those types of political risks that separate him from his father.
He may look like his dad, he may talk like his dad, but the city is different, and his political aspirations, his political enjoyment is much different than his father.
How are you?
I like to get up in the morning and walk around the city early in the morning. You'll find out sometimes what a city's really like.
A city that will undoubtedly call him mayor for at least another 4 years. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
Both houses of the Virginia legislature voted unanimously late today to express profound regret for the state's role in slavery. Supporters say they know of no other state that has apologized for slavery, although Missouri is considering similar legislation. 6,500 home fans watched the Duke lacrosse team defeat Dartmouth in the team's first game in almost a year. The 2006 season was canceled after 3 players were charged with rape. Those charges were dropped in December. Some Kennedy memorabilia found in a Cape Cod storage unit was sold at auction today. Among the items is a letter Jacqueline Kennedy wrote to her sister-in-law Joan about her troubled marriage to Ted Kennedy. In it, Jackie says, quote, "What kind of woman but a sap or a slave can stand that and still be a loving wife?" The letter sold for $7,500. Just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, this duo is challenging the president's faith-based initiative in the U.S. Supreme Court. Do they have a prayer? One of President Bush's earliest initiatives faces a challenge next week in the U.S. Supreme Court. At issue is federal support for faith-based social programs. The battle over separation of church and state is the focus of tonight's Weekend Journal.
They don't seem like much of a threat.
So it is nicer today than we...
It's really nice.
But if Annie Laurie Gaylor...
Hello, all you irreverent infidels.
And Dan Barker...
And I'm Dan Barker, your friendly neighborhood atheist.
...have their way...
The President of the United States.
Faith-based conferences like this one in March of 2006 could disappear.
The second White House National Conference on Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and I appreciate your attendance. I take this conference very seriously.
The conferences are one component of Mr. Bush's faith-based initiative, his first major program after taking office in 2001. They are designed to help religious groups get access to federal funding. 11 cabinet offices have centers for faith-based programs, which operate in many states to help those in need. In 2006, a lower court said the Freedom from Religion Foundation, headed by Gaylor and Barker, had legal standing as taxpayers to challenge the White House practice of spending money on the conferences. The administration appealed the case to the Supreme Court.
We're challenging the creation of the faith-based offices at the White House and at the cabinet levels, and their faith-based bureaucracy, what they've set up with multi-million dollars.
Their argument that the funding of the conferences is unconstitutional, violating the separation between church and state. The president has insisted the programs are on the correct side of that wall and that they work.
If you're addicted to alcohol, if a faith program is able to get you off alcohol, we ought to say hallelujah and thanks at the federal level.
Jay Sekulow is chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and filed a friend of the court brief supporting the administration.
I understand people say, I don't like my money going to that particular process. But you know what? You and I both pay taxes. And there are things that the government funds that I don't like. But that's part of the deal. That's part of being an American. You can't simply object simply because your portion of your tax dollars is going to something you really don't like. And it's just not the way the system works.
This is the first Supreme Court case directly related to the president's faith-based initiative. It's scheduled to be heard this Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Thalia Shura, CBS News in New York. Good night, everyone.
CBS News. See it now, anytime, anywhere.